Hello and welcome to you wherever you might be on this Friday afternoon or morning. You're tuning into our Pure Leadership series, and today's topic, conquering AI's twin hurdles in cost, optimization and scalability. I'm Lachlan Cahoon, Australia and New Zealand editor for CDOTrends, and I'm your moderator. And thanks to our partners Pure Storage for hosting this event today. As we look at the immense potential of AI, but also the challenges organisations face in unlocking that potential. So today we're focusing on the two biggest unknowns, cost optimization and scalability. From data prep to inference, AI workloads are constantly shifting. We'll explore how storage infrastructure can help manage costs and avoid nasty surprises. We'll touch on the debate around cloud versus on-prem for AI and seek to understand cost and flexibility trade-offs and how to allocate resources effectively. We'll also discuss the mastering of scalability and how real-time inference, diverse data and ever-changing models are pushing scalability to the limit. That'll lead to a discussion on how to build an AI-ready data architecture that avoids over-provisioning and delivers performance at scale. And to navigate these issues for us, I'd like to welcome our panel, Matthew Oostveen. He's the Chief Technology Officer, Asia Pacific and Japan for Pure Storage. Alan Song, Executive Director and Head, Strategy and Transformation, Financial Markets at Standard Chartered Bank. And Jing Qing, Head of Data Science and Analytics at Alexandra Hospital in Singapore. So we also welcome questions from the participants in the audience, and we invite you to post your questions in the chat function on your screen. And I hope to get to these questions in around the halfway point of today's session. Can I kick off perhaps though with Matt Oostveen from Pure Storage? You work across industries and organisations. You're in a good position to give us an overview of the Asia Pacific market and what's happening. In our conversations before the event, you told me that we're experiencing a gold rush in AI. Can you tell us, what does that gold rush look like, Matt?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, of course, as you said, Lachlan. I use that term gold rush to describe what was happening in artificial intelligence, because I feel that there is certainly something of almost a gung-ho attitude coming across from some of the executive leaders, whether that be boards or CEOs, certainly the C-suite, in order to investigate the opportunity and the potential return on investment that could be made from investing within AI. The gold rush mentality, of course, is one where you're more concerned about being the first, about exploring and understanding, than you are about, say, optimization. It's a different frame of mind. It's a different posture. And so when I use that word, I'm not necessarily talking about the fact that there are riches to be had in this world of AI, and possibly there are, but it's more about the mindset of the people that are entering into the marketplace and the posture with which they do so.
Okay, so you're also making the point that you see a lot of POCs and pilots, but many of them are failing. Why is that? What are you seeing there?
So this is an interesting one. If I were to talk to, and I do, customers around the region, whether they're in banking, financial services, whether it's in Australia or the manufacturers in Taiwan and Korea, etc., there is a lot of interest in AI. And the first initial steps, we'll call it the test balloons that are being flown, is to understand whether these, I suppose, pilots are going to work. So these proofs of concept are being rolled out. There's a lot of them. I don't want to name names, but there is a Big Four bank in Australia, and they have actively around 60 to 70 Gen AI POCs and pilots currently inside their environment. I was speaking at a financial services event in Australia recently, and I would estimate that there are about 250 discrete pilots and POCs taking place across the audience. I'd almost, if I was a doctor, I'd diagnose the audience with pilotitis. Everyone's running these pilots. But unfortunately, not all of them are going to make it across the line. And there's a couple of reasons, and I just want to talk about this. It's okay for pilots to fail. That's the first thing. We are experimenting. Experimentation is good, but this high level of failure is probably more so than we would ordinarily expect and want. POCs and pilots fail for all sorts of reasons. The typical reasons that a project might take too long or it might cost too much. But specific to AI, if I was to use one word to describe why these POCs are failing, it's trust. There is a lack of trust in the output and the results that are coming from this. And I think when that trust is eroded, then the POC and the pilot is pulled.
Thank you. Just to take the medical analogy a bit further, we're going to take the pulse of the audience with an audience poll. If we can have the slide up there for the audience poll. So we're interested in finding out from you, the audience, your key challenges in AI adoption, and we have a list of responses there. You can pick several, so you can pick several of the ones that are most important to you: meeting ESG goals, data growth, need for more computing power, costs, data storage infrastructure, business continuity and disaster recovery, performance, governance and regulation, or others. And if you have another one, please feel free to give us a short explanation in the box there. So you can pick one or more of those answers. So we're very, very interested in your responses to those. So as you listen to the conversation today, please have a ponder of those questions and make your choice. Just Matt, before we move to the other panelists, so I think you also made the point that we've seen this first wave of AI and we're into the second. So what are the new priorities in this second wave of AI?
I think if I was to label things, I would call the first wave 1.0. Pretty straightforward. It's where we were discovering and finding out. Wave 2.0 has different priorities. This is where we need to start responding to the business needs. We need to show a return on investment. We need to be able to demonstrate that the POCs work. But I think importantly, we need to be able to scale these proofs of concept beyond what's almost a cottage-like industry that has emerged within our IT departments, to go from something small and perhaps cobbled together to something that is scalable, something that is enterprise ready, and something that's able to also deliver from a cost efficiency perspective at scale.
So how has AI transformed data storage? I mean, we've seen a lot of stories in the press about the huge thirst for storage, and but in terms of infrastructure, in terms of configuration, how much of a game changer has storage been?
Oh, it's for us, it's huge. And I know there's a lot of attention that goes towards GPUs, and rightly so. It's a slightly different way of computing. But the reality is that we've moved to this different way of processing. We're using more GPUs, obviously, in the AI world. And these GPUs process very quickly and have a huge demand for data and data flow. So your storage systems need to be quick. They need to be able to keep these GPUs at higher levels of utilizations than they currently are. And this, interestingly, is one of the thrusts moving us from AI 1.0 to 2.0, because our utilization rates are very low within the GPU realm. It's probably estimated that it's sitting at around 18 to 20%. And if we look at the utilization of CPU assets, it's probably over 80%. And that's quite galling for an executive, considering the fact that it is very hard to get hold of a GPU at the moment. The lead times are very long. They're very expensive. They're sought after assets, and yet we're not utilizing them properly. Having a data storage platform that's able to keep these GPUs fed and closer to full utilization is a better way to extract value from the asset. And it's only when we construct our infrastructure and our platform in harmony between the network, compute, and the storage that we're truly able to get value from these investments.
Thank you. And Alan Song from Stanchart, can I bring you in here? Can I also just say that Alan has a bit of a claim to fame? He mentioned it when we had our call yesterday. He studied under Geoffrey Hinton, who's just been awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics. I'm sure some of that brilliance rubbed up on you, Alan. So, Alan, your experience has been sector and organisation specific. Can you tell us in general about the initiatives and projects you've been involved with at Stanchart in this area?
Sure. Just as a bit of background, I look after transformation for security services, which is a custody and a fund administration service provider across about 40 markets. And one of the challenges that we really have is local market nuances, different types of data being captured, and then that cascades down to how do we actually train models and use them for our clients' benefit. Now, we've been using more, legacy AI, rules-based machine learning for years now, but we're finally getting into the space of using larger foundational models for driving things like natural language processing that is a lot more agnostic, handling unstructured data at high accuracy rates. An area of the bank that's been really leading the way is AML KYC. So most of the AI applications happen in that space, entity resolution, things like that. But on our side, we've been trying to embed AI more into transaction processing. Now, this is very difficult because the sets of data have different requirements and constraints, data privacy. We're using our clients' data. So you have to be very, very careful in how we use it, how we train models. That brings a lot of overhead, right? So when we're looking at document processing, it costs a lot more per sample of data used to train because we have to mask it, we have to clear with the clients. All these things factor into the cost that we're trying to optimize. But document processing has shown the first area of real benefit to us. We're able to straight through process transactions a lot faster in markets that are just, the market standard is doing it manually because you're receiving faxes, you're receiving PDFs, you're receiving empty 599s. Now we're trying to parlay that into even more advanced capabilities, more advanced predictive capabilities around fails predictions, helping recommend issue resolution options to our clients more proactively and using AI to do that. And then, of course, our generative AI space. As Matt was saying, there's a lot of POCs or POCs out there right now, and the goal is to bring that into production. Like that is where we're at. I think we have a lot of use cases. There's a lot of value that we see. And I think back to Matt's point on the gold rush, I think what the gold rush didn't have in the mid 1800s were terms like agile and MVP and hype curves. And we're at the risk of falling down that hype curve from our investors' perspective, or people that are fronting the money here, if we don't start bringing them into production. And again, cost optimization scaling is really one of the major deal breakers in getting there.
So what have been your challenges, and have you had any major wins?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges being any kind of first mover or trying to get POCs live is, again, showcasing early successes. We've been able to go live with some MVPs, but that took a lot of upfront cost. And it's about convincing, senior management, our users, that you're going to get that value when the scale comes. That's not, that kind of leeway isn't going to last forever. We really have to keep on showing successes. The other thing is a challenge and win is that user adoption. So both our clients and our internal users understanding AI, understanding how the benefits it brings, understand how it links into their existing workflows and platforms. Something we've been really focusing on, and I think we've had a lot of success in co-creating with our clients, bringing them into the design and into the solutioning, showcasing them early on how this is going to benefit them, rather than kind of waiting till it's live and then getting there. What we've seen is that that's helped us actually bring on prospective clients and retain clients as well. So the value from that is helping that cost equation or that benefit case. And I think that's something important for people to consider when rolling out AI products or solutions that will ultimately impact clients.
So an organization such as Stanchart, you must have data all over the place across jurisdictions. It's a huge legacy organization. There must be legacy systems where data has been lingering for quite a long time. Tell us about the importance of identifying the right data and preparing it to feed the model so that you can get a result. That must be a significant part of what you're looking to do.
Absolutely. So I think every single large financial institution has spent probably a decade or so trying to centralize their data, right? And obviously now with the push for cloud, we're getting better architecture around how to do that, a bit better modeling, people with the experience on how to model the data. I think one suggestion is that, find a data architect who understands AI. I think if you can proactively model your data, how it's going to be used, whether it's the frequency, the quality, the availability, the location, that all plays a role into how fast or how cost effectively you can use that data to train models, to inference on models. Now, the other thing, it's a very basic, obvious thing, but you have to understand the problem you're trying to solve. And you have to understand the types of AI models that are being used in order to architect your data and to be able to prepare them properly. One of the biggest pieces of cost overhead for us is the manual annotation of data when it comes to training, leading to how you're going to cluster the models, trial and error there. If you can be more first time right in that space, you save a lot of money, and that helps with the business case. Absolutely.
So in the pre-event call, you also made the point you're finding it effective to work with smaller models. Can you describe what you're doing there, and why is that giving you a better result? And does it then enable you to prove it there and then scale it from there? Is that what happens?
Yeah, so it definitely plays a role in kind of proving it early, but also will play a role in kind of the long-term benefit. So this is really part of our diversification of our AI strategy. So we're obviously looking at the large proprietary models out there, like every firm really in the world is doing right now, whether it's the OpenAIs or the Copilots or the Geminis. But as regulation needs to kind of catch up to using those large proprietary models where there's still uncertainty on data privacy and bias and hallucination, all the other risks when it comes to AI, we found that using the smaller models that you can bring on-prem, in-house, controlled, targeted to specific activities, and it kind of aligns with our route too. We're trying to start small. We're trying to start automating individual components rather than going with this big bang and replacing everything. It's more about integration, and integration with these small models not only helps you focus the model's activities on a specific task that you can kind of fine tune and pre-train for, but also optimize with RAG, which we'll talk about later. But also it optimizes the compute. It optimizes the performance if you sequence it well, and you can sequence it almost at a runtime basis rather than kind of pre-trained in the models or the infrastructure side. All these things add value. So again, we don't think this is the only strategy to go with, but if you can start with the small models, experiment with them. You can use open source models on-prem, whatever it is. They're also easier to explain. That gives you a way to prove that concept earlier, which then may actually advocate for the larger models in the long term.
Thank you, Alan. And now to Jin Ching at the Alexandra Hospital in Singapore. Your experience has been quite different in a different sector completely. Where are your AI initiatives? Are they both in the clinical and administrative areas of the hospital?
Yeah, so as my name suggests, I'm a head of data science and analytics. So the team originally is all data scientists. So we are traditionally doing all the data analytics, machine learnings, building models, kind of thing. So when the generative AI emerged its capabilities, we are experimenting our own notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, and VS Code. And we are thinking about how to democratize the capability of AI, right? Let more people to enjoy the benefits. Then we venture into developing all the use case into application. Then we realize a lot of applications, right? People want it, but probably in the beginning, the people may not really know what they want. That's why statistics shows that 90% of the AI pilot projects fails. So from there on, we think about we shall not just build individual use case. We shall build some common platform which allow to onboard different use case. So some use case good, we go ahead. Some cases fail, then we just stop from there, right? So we build a common platform, can easily customize and onboard different use case. So this is something directions we are moving on. So for example, we are building something like the agentic workflow platform. So as long as the user have some use case, the business case scenarios, we can customize the workflow according to the user's needs, right? Probably in very short period of time, short turnaround time, and then we can do a pilot testing. So I think in this fashion, we can quickly testing the idea and to prove that the concept of whether there's a further value for investment for each use case. So that is the journey so we have gone so far.
I'll ask you the same question I asked Alan. What have been your challenges and your wins? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I think because I've been from different industry, healthcare, and especially in public healthcare. In Singapore, in public healthcare, the IT governance process is very, very rigid. So to work around with the IT governance is very daunting, especially for new users. And for the vendors, partners, if they want to work with us, they usually take a very long time to navigate the IT governance landscape. So in a way to inflate the cost and prolong the lead time. So internally, as our team, we need to figure out how to work around with all the IT governance rules and still comply, right, to the standards. And that's really need to spend some efforts for the people in the team. And it's definitely not very friendly for the external partners as well. So develop internal capabilities and familiarize with the landscape is quite important. So the wings is we have the applications developed, go live since last September from one hospital. Now the application is a scale up across the entire NUHS cluster. NUHS cluster is a healthcare system. So we have 3 major hospitals plus polyclinics, School of Dental, School of Medicine. That's a cluster of entities within NUHS. So we are also applying funding to scale this up to other healthcare cluster like National Health Group. So to allow more people to enjoy the benefit. Yeah, so that's the wings I talk about.
So in our pre-event call, you made the point that it's not so much data storage your issue, but the challenge of minimizing hallucinations from your outputs. And I understand that you are finding RAG invaluable. Could you tell us about that and how you're using it?
Yeah, so we after some time we realized just a simple chatbot like some consumer chatbot ChatGPT may not meet the needs for enterprise AI, because for enterprise AI we need more specific answer, and the answer must be tailored and grounded based on the corporate knowledge and information. So the RAG become the cornerstone for the enterprise AI, right? So in order to make the RAG work for each use case, the flow must be very, very tailored and customized for. For example, if you want to have a RAG for the corporate policy, finance policy, HR policy, that probably is less difficult because there's still a level of tolerance for error. But if you are doing a RAG for the clinical practice guideline, for example, how to treat patients with DM2 and a follow-up for already for 2 years, what's the follow-up plan kind of thing. So those informations are usually sitting in their doctor's clinical guideline, clinical practice guideline, which are already curated the information in a bunch of files. And the details, there are so many of those. And the answer, we shall capture all the details instead of summarize, right? So those kind of RAG is quite hard in terms of the accuracy, because the user will usually demand very high level of accuracy. If there's some little bit missing here and there, they will complain about it, and it's not safe to use in the clinical setting, right? So different type of use case we need to tailor. That's why we call agentic RAG. So we adding some reflection, we adding some original coding, we adding some of the extraction of the graphic informations. We need to put all these pieces together in order to improve the quality of the RAG. So the quality of the RAG, okay, so for any programmers, you can just build a RAG system, right? Maybe in half an hour based on all the open stacks, which are very simple. But the accuracy probably you can get 70%. But in order to move up further to the ladder, the cost and time invest must be growing up exponentially. So when people or organizations are making decisions, want to invest in RAG or enterprise AI, so they must keep this in mind.
Thank you. So now to the audience, I would encourage you now to start posting your questions in the Q&A function, and we can sprinkle them through the conversation in the time that we have left. So Matt, what you've heard from the other two panelists, how does that tally with what you're seeing in the wider market?
Well, I'll start with Jin, because I love listening to his approach to AI inside the organization. And if I was to describe the approach, it's almost textbook. Firstly, the identification that off-the-shelf AI is something of a blunt tool. It's a Fisher-Price toy, really. And we're trying to apply that in an enterprise setting, and doing so without the additional color and context that RAG provides is going to lead to very poor outcomes indeed. Then we go to the next level here. We were listening to Jin talking about how he's trying to improve the accuracy of the model by improving the approach to RAG. And I can't help but make a comment here, which kind of links to what Alan was discussing, which is around sourcing good information and good data sets within your own organization. for someone like Standard Chartered Bank, and Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are literally decades, if not over half a century of data sets that you could plausibly pull from. But unfortunately, they're probably sitting on some legacy systems. They're tucked away in different parts of the organization, and quite often, unless you've got a very active CDO, you may not be aware of where some of these data sets sit. The secret really to getting RAG to perform well is ensuring that you've got great data to come in. And it's that old adage of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Unless we're able to accurately source great data sets, to have that harmonized, to have that canonized as well for input within RAG, then we're going to have poor output. The other thing I want to bring in here is just that angle that Pure Storage brings, which is obviously from an infrastructure perspective. One of the things that people may not understand is that RAG is actually very data intensive and very storage intensive indeed. If we look at something like the SEC database, so we work with banks around the world, and in order to improve some of their modeling, they might want to connect to SEC filings over the last 5 years. That data set raw is probably sitting at around about 35 terabytes. If you put that into a RAG format, which necessitates what we call a vector database, that's jumping to 150 to 200 terabytes. So we're seeing a massive increase in the size of the data set, really because of the way that we're structuring and allocating the data so that it can be fed more efficiently into an AI system. So, lots to pick on there.
And so I understand that RAG is not terribly common at the moment. I think you sort of said that very small penetration right now, predicting that 2025 would be a year of major implementation of RAG. Why is it? Is it the new magic bullet, or is it? How would you describe the momentum for the uptake?
That's probably why I use the term textbook for Jin's approach. So I would say that NUHS is probably a few years ahead of the curve. Most of the marketplace today is using off-the-shelf AI products, whether that's, we all know the brands, ChatGPT, etc. Unfortunately, that's leading to poor outcomes, which is leading to a lack of trust. What we're seeing at the moment is a really rapid rotation towards the re-injection of trust. You re-inject trust in an AI model by grounding it. The best way to ground it is by using a RAG methodology. What we're watching in the marketplace at the moment is a really big uptake in the interest in RAG. And I would estimate that we were probably last year to this year about 1 to 2% of deployments utilizing RAG. When we go to the year, say 2026, 2027, I expect that number would probably be around 70 to 80%. So at the moment, there's a really big shift internally inside organizations in the way that they're re-injecting trust into the AI models that are being deployed. And I think the corollary effect of this is going to be a reduction in that failure rate of the POCs and pilots that we're talking about, because now we can start to trust those outputs.
Thank you. Now, Alan, we've heard from both Matt and Chin about RAG. Do you have a view? Is it the big minimizer of hallucinations? Are you using it there? Are you planning to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would even say that we probably won't go live with any generative AI use cases in the near future that doesn't have a RAG component to it. And what I can say is our first real, true production ready Gen AI solution that's going live this year, it does have RAG as kind of the main aspect of it. And just to give you a sense of what that is, it's running market insights, pulling information from regulatory websites and governments, notices, and consolidating those and generating kind of insights and news flashes for our clients, right? So I think so absolutely it helps with hallucinations, but it absolutely helps with that business case. Now, what I would say is there's a couple other components extending on what Matt and Jim were covering that we really look at. So one is it like a dynamic, or is it a controlled approach to RAG? So in chatbots, being able to introduce RAG into chatbot is very difficult. This is why companies like Perplexity are worth multiple billions of dollars, because they're able to do that. Whereas for our client-facing chatbots, that is a significant bigger investment that we may have to go to those off-the-shelf proprietary service providers. Now, on a controlled basis, this is where, that use case I just mentioned is where we can control it, what articles are being pulled, what types of information. It's only the most recent ones. That makes it a lot easier to incorporate RAG into our solutions. The other one that Matt was alluding to is that large versus small data sets. I think, if we could fit unlimited amounts of data into our AI models, we could probably solve every problem that we've ever thought of. Now, being able to bring in small sets of data at a runtime basis also ties into our approach with the small models. Focus on a specific task. That task may need just that latest update from the number of transactions we've got from the client, the number of fails, the number of investigations, and we're able to paint that picture for something that's valuable but small and easily deployable.
Thank you. Now, I'm still not seeing any questions from the audience. We're certainly welcoming them. Please, if you do have a question, post it via the Q&A button on the bottom navigation bar. But one thing that I'm interested in is the implications that RAG has for infrastructure, and in particular, does it have any implications for the argument on on-prem or not? Do you have a view on that, Matt? What are the implications infrastructure-wise?
Well, the implications are a number of things. So let's go back to what Alan was talking about, and also Jin touched on, which is around the regulatory and compliance issues, as well as the location of the data. Some of the data that may be used within data sets for these AI models can't leave particular jurisdictions. If we're talking about healthcare, it's very heavily regulated, and some data sets just can't leave particular jurisdictions. Putting it into a public cloud, for example, for analysis may be a no-go, depending on the jurisdiction that you're from. If we're talking about regulation, you can't overlook the banking sector. That's some of the regulators have the sharpest teeth that I've ever seen. Are looking after the banking sector, and they're certainly adamant that data shouldn't be leaving particular jurisdictions. Now, if we listen to what Alan was discussing before, talking about smaller models, talking about, I suppose, edge AI use cases, this is a really great way to work within the framework of sovereignty to ensure that local, discrete, specific, and identifying information is kept on premises or kept within a particular boundary, and only the necessary data goes back to a centralized source for additional processing, which is why a lot of people like this, edge AI use case. From a perspective of RAG also, if we're going to start moving data sets on premises, we need to remember performance is an issue. Well, it's an issue whether it's in the public cloud or whether it's on premises. On-premises storage systems are typically more robust. They're certainly a lot faster. And if you're using something from our organization, it's going to be all flash and arguably one of the fastest storage systems on the planet. So we're certainly very well versed in extracting performance from the vector database to ensure those GPUs and CPUs that I was talking about, as well as the network, are kept highly utilized.
Now, Jen, you are implementing RAG. Where do you sort of sit on this cloud v on-prem configuration with RAG? Is it an issue for you?
I think both on cloud and prem can work. We use a bit of hybrid cloud because internally we have some GPU cluster services already running. So we use some of the internal resources, compute to run the re-rankers, they run the embeddings. Those are we run in-house. But the storage, the LLM, we use in the cloud. For the LLM, for the RAG, our experience is we shall use the best model available for the inferencing, because the information, imagine you retrieve from all the vector database, a chunk of the information, you need a very smart model, right, to synthesize the answers according to users' needs. And some model even can synthesize the answer into a table kind of format, which make the readers more understandable. So to use RAG, probably you need multiple nodes. Some nodes probably just do a simple work, right? So you want to classify the question, you want to maybe rewriting the question. Those are probably used like smaller models, quicker models. You can do the work and you speed up the entire process. But the synthesized part, you want to use the best model available according to your needs in order to provide a more solid answer. So that's the experience we have so far.
Alan, how do you think you'll be approaching it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to give a call out to Matt, and the previous session we did in the series in March, we were talking about Edge AI. A few months after Apple announced Apple Intelligence, which is kind of the epitome of Edge AI sitting on your phones. But that's really a testament to that jurisdictional nature of the data. We have use cases where, we have client information in certain markets that cannot leave that jurisdiction. And the only way to use AI type solutions is to have a server, a model, some infrastructure sitting on site. But that is a lot more possible now with those smaller models. So that can run RAG, and that can kind of inherit upwards towards an on-prem solution that's more global to a cloud solution that's more global, that offers different levels of compute, different levels, different types of data sets that are available to it. So that's the model that we want to see when it comes to RAG. There's different approaches, different levels that satisfy the regulatory nature, of which I would say we're probably at the most stringent of that level when it comes to data privacy and sovereignty.
Excellent, thank you. I think it's probably time to test the pulse of the audience. I think we may have an opportunity to have a look at the responses to our audience poll. Key challenges in AI adoption. Data growth is obviously the big one there. 58% of you have not nominated that one. The next one, costs. Well, that speaks very much to the subject of our event today, doesn't it? Also important, the need for more computing power. And then equally data storage infrastructure and meeting ESG goals, sustainability issues, and performance and business continuity are both equal down the bottom there, only on 11%. So that's a big tick there for data growth as one of the key challenges in AI adoption, followed by cost, and followed by the need for more computing power. That's a very interesting result. So thank you to all of you who contributed your opinions to that poll. That's very informative. We do have some questions from the audience. I'd like to go to them now. This is obviously one from Matt. How does Pure Storage facilitate seamless data mobility across different environments, on-premises, hybrid, and multi-cloud? And what challenges have you encountered in this area, which could be more related to some gaming organizations, the query says.
Okay. Firstly, it helps to understand who we are as an organization and what we do. We're effectively a software company that specializes in data management that got in the hardware business because it was the best way to consume the software. But what that means is you can effectively disaggregate Purity, which is the operating system that runs on our infrastructure, and that can run natively inside AWS. Or it can run natively inside Microsoft as a first-class agent. What that means is that you're working within the same control plane as well as the same management plane. And there is a seamless integration between where you keep your data sets, whether that's on-premises, whether that's off-premises, whether that is sitting in an Equinix data center. It really doesn't matter from our perspective, nor from the operator's perspective. So what we've done is we've injected an enormous amount of simplicity into a multitude of various environments so that an organization doesn't need to keep bringing up different consoles trying to manage these data silos that continually emerge. And I will say this about silos. I think 90% of the conversations I've had with CIOs over the years have been about, deconstructing silos. It's always a topic of conversation, and yet we seem to build them faster than we can tear them down. And I think our approach has been to try and simplify that data realm for customers.
That's an interesting comment. Jen, is that why you built that sort of common platform? Is that to de-silo your efforts in this area?
Yeah, so we have a common platform in this for AI development. We also have a common platform in terms of the human. So we have people from finance, people from a clinical side. They all come together to this platform to discuss. So then we build more use case in this software platform. So I think the software platform is able to enable use case faster to test the idea. That's the whole objective.
Thank you. Here's one for you, Alan. What's your advice? I mean, you must have many clients within your organization, all sort of clamoring for an AI project. How do you bring them into the design process? Is there a best practice, and is there a way that you approach it, and any advice on what people should avoid?
Yeah, sure. I would say bringing them in now is a lot easier than it was before, for sure. Now, we get this question from clients every due diligence visit, every service review, every meeting with a prospective client. Now, in the past, though, it was about sharing, right? At every service review, sharing kind of what's our roadmap, focusing more on AI, and sharing their expertise. What has helped bring them into the loop was really focusing on those client outcomes, right? A lot of people talk about AI, having AI in front of the words AI in front of every single use case that's out there. But what does that mean for the client, and how does that help them, not just from a turnaround time accuracy perspective, but building up their own knowledge? Like, they're curious about this, they want to use AI more in their organization, and we're going down the route. I mean, most banks talk about becoming a technology company, right? So what does that mean? That means providing some expertise, using the fact that we have 200, 300 POCs out there to share best practices and lessons learned, but also educate on sort of what types of risks that's bringing. It's different. It's a different way of working, a different way of approaching transaction processing, and then honestly leverage it as a marketing tool to showcase, well, we have these controls in place. We have a responsible AI team and governance team in the bank that is industry leading. So it ensures that anything that we do put out into the market is going to be, satisfying all the requirements and give that level of comfort to the clients, that they have more positive outcomes. So, those few things has really helped us in conversations, and we've had some clients really involved in the training and the testing, and we're hoping that increases even more. But we're definitely seeing that trend in the market.
Thank you. Jen, here's a question for you from our audience. Rag, in your experience, what are the pitfalls that people overlook when using it, as many see it as a silver bullet?
Yeah, so I have experience with different users. Some users, right, they believe that, oh, the RAG can do everything. It just dump in all the documents, then they can answer. But in reality, the more information, the too much information you dump into one RAG, the RAG will confuse, because the vector dimension is just this much. So if you dump in too much information, the bot will get confused. So they'll give us like some kind of ambiguous answers. So ideally, based on our experiment, we shall be, every RAG should just focus on one domain. If the domain is too big, probably internally we need to do a little bit segregation as well. So we need to have a classifier to route the RAG to a different underlying database. So I mean, the storage is not an issue, but if too much information dumped into one RAG, the vector searching become an issue. So there's an ambiguity coming out together, which will mess up the final response. So these are an experiment results so far. So for the users, either they give too little data, which the RAG doesn't really function, then end up if the RAG cannot answer, the RAG will just become hallucination, right? But the other end is the user dump too much information into the RAG, then the AI is just kind of confused. The retrieve is too many chunks and too many similar informations. They cannot answer the questions on a point. Yeah, so that's the people usually in the beginning, they don't really understand how RAG works. They're hitting these kind of people.
Thank you. Can I now mention, actually, in the webinar chat, you'll see that there are some links to CDOTrends where we have some white papers that may be interesting and valuable resources on this issue. So we'll leave them there, and post the discussion. You might like to click on those and access some of those additional resources that are available on the CDOTrends website. Now, here's a question from Nikhil Suman, one of our people in the audience. I guess I'll start with you on this one, Matt. How can we differently control the performance of RAG?
Well, I'm going to assume that the performance of RAG in this context, or the definition that Nikhil's looking at, is the output or the quality, which is what Jin was just discussing. So there are limitations, of course, to how much domain-specific information can be provided to the vector database before it's, to use a better word, overwhelmed. I think that ensuring firstly that you're using it, ensuring that you've got the right architecture in place, making sure that it blends the best qualities of what can be obtained in a public cloud with on-premises systems, depending on your internal capabilities, your skill sets, and where your current investments have been made, of course. I would always be on a quest to find the most relevant and domain-specific information that is available. And sometimes you need to look externally to find that. Sure, we've got some great internal data sets, but there are many proprietary databases that are also available at a cost, and that will greatly improve the output of RAG. I wanted to make another comment as well, just to pick up on the last thing that Jin said, which was his view that RAG needs to be, I suppose, more specific and domain specific. It's not an overarching, killer app, if you will, that's going to be able to solve every particular query that comes its way. And I think that this is foreshadowing what the future will look like for RAG implementations moving into the next couple of years. Let's say 2026, 2027. I think we're going to see Gen AI starting to look very industry specific, very domain specific. There will be multiple iterations and versions that are very finely tuned and honed for specific outputs to improve the quality there. For Nickel, that may mean being able to acquire off-the-shelf, pre-tuned and pre-trained models that will be able to provide a better output and better performance inside his organization.
Thank you. Now, one of the other themes of this event is to talk about cost minimization. I mean, and this is a question from my colleague Winston Thomas, which I was just about to get to actually in my own question list. We all know costs are ballooning. What are recent insights on keeping costs down and optimized, such as GPU utilization? Vector data, perhaps? Is anybody up for a response on this one? All right, Matt.
I mean, I've got an opinion on this, and I think I'll answer it at a higher level. And that higher level speaks to the shift in, I suppose, this utility model world that we're in now. Let's go back a few years. When Uber first came out, it was cheaper to use Uber than it was a taxi. I loved Airbnb. It was more cost effective, particularly, getting a larger place than it was getting a hotel. Now Uber's more expensive than the taxi. Now Airbnb is pricier than a hotel. And I will argue that hyperscalers and public cloud is now more expensive than doing it yourself. I would, look to and advise organizations, if they want to cost optimize, to start looking at different architectures that may be much better at extracting value particularly from the AI deployments. And I say this because that failure rate that we keep going back to with these POCs and pilots, one of the reasons that they're failing, there's probably a dozen reasons, but one of the reasons is that when you run this as a POC inside a public cloud, there is a certain scale to those economics. When you try and super scale that across an enterprise, across a large organization, those economics start to break down at scale, and it starts to become more cost advantageous to look at perhaps a blended model that incorporates investments in your own facilities.
Yeah, and maybe
Alan,
just to add to that, in even broader level, but for a large organization, most AI work is being done silo by silo. That's the reality. Until you see every organization kind of hiring that chief AI officer, there are some that are out there. That top down is not quite there yet. So you really need to consolidate across silos, across functions. As Matt was saying, building those foundational models or foundational AI platforms to satisfy a larger use case set to get that cost effectiveness. Until then, it's really up to each silo to depend how much money they want to put into it in terms of front running that build. But we're seeing that more in our organization as well. There's simple use cases like reading an invoice that happens across pretty much every single arm of corporate investment banking and retail banking. Yet at the same time, historically, each silo has been trying to build their own models to do that. Whereas there's larger training sets, there's work that's already been done, similar annotations and data modeling. We need to take advantage of that to be more cost effective.
Just to add on a bit, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
please.
So that comes to the cost optimizations, right? Our experience is because we have both on-prem and the cloud. So on-prem, we have the DGX clusters running GPUs, very powerful. But the experience for us is the on-prem one, we always over provision and it's always underutilized. The cloud one, we don't need to care, right? Because we just pay by whatever usages. I think that would be an advantage. We pool the resources with other tenants, other users. So the cloud they can optimize the overall resource. But if internal deployment, that's usually the scenario, because this kind of AI workload, unlike the database or EMR system, the transactions is constant. So the CPU usage is probably 80% most of the time. But the GPU really depends, right? If the workload comes, it's an AI tsunami. But it's people are going to sleep or nothing is running. It's go by like 0.1% kind of usage all the time. So probably the overall usage, you average out 10%, 5% for the GPU, which is not very cost effective. But when we need to use it, it hit the bottleneck. So that's the challenge if we deploy those kind of things on-prem. And in terms of cost optimizations, we prefer to leverage on the cloud services as much as we can.
So are we at a point where organizations are having to make a choice about balancing cost containment and performance? Are we at a point where cost is starting to matter a little bit more? I mean, Matt talked about a gold rush, and a gold rush people are desperate to get to the river, and they don't care how much they spend to get there because they think they're going to get rich. Where are we now in this? Is there a bit of a sort of a pushback against that? Alan, I'd be interested in your view.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is, as we're going live with actual applications with generative AI, the performance is playing a role in whether or not we have more appetite to spend more money. That's part of the equation. And the risk that we have is that if we do have poor performance because of how we've architected or designed the solutions, we're going to see the investment fall. So I mean, to me, it's more of a business case driver. Is performance will be a role as we scale. So you have to see that link of performance and scaling, and that needs to be factored into the business cases.
So Jen, are you trading off cost and flexibility in any way and allocating your resources accordingly on that basis?
Okay, so our bottom line is we don't compromise on performance, right? But we compare. Okay, so there's a good and bad. For example, the embedding we are running, we running on-prem, which we can handle a large load at one go. If we leverage on AWS, the cloud, they only do a lot of sequencing, so we cannot do like a parallel processing. So we want to have some burst kind of workloads. It cannot be done. So in this case, we have to balance that. Even we run in-house, the cost probably is a bit higher, the usage is a bit lower, but we can handle that kind of particular needs. So that one cannot be avoided. So in that case, we still prefer to use those services on-prem. Then for the LLM, I think running on-prem, that will be damn hard and very resource intensive. So we leverage on the best model available. Usually, those best models are proprietary models. So we rather leverage on the cloud provider. So in a way, we balance the quality we need and versus the cost we willing to spend. But overall, actually, because the GPU is already invested for years ago, and the additional hosting costs with cloud consumptions is become OPEX. And so far, it's quite manageable. Even we roll out many use cases already.
Thank you. So I can't believe that we only have 5 minutes left on this call. I just checked the time. So I'd like to go around the panel now and ask you, if final comments and perhaps a view to 2025 next year and as to what your organizations might be doing and what you might be seeing in this area. Jen, can I start with you?
Yeah. So I think as Matt mentioned, so I have the same feeling. Moving forwards, the AI will be more industry specific. Will be because the real value of enterprise AI is to customize or integrate with various systems or various business workflow. So a lot of time need people interventions to make some simple decisions. AI will take over, right? So by integrating AI into the workflow, I think that's the next steps that the AI we are heading to, and that will simplify the workflow, streamline, reduce some burden of the staff. So because healthcare is always burdened by the manpower. So that's our key objective for moving the AI towards.
Excellent. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, I would echo that. Integration over large replacements is the way to go, and I think that's a highlight that, we talked a lot about the data source and availability in this call, but also at the application level, how you're going to orchestrate your services and your processes and integrate AI into them without building AI only solutions. That's definitely our strategy as well. That also lends to why we're looking at those smaller models, right? We're looking at smaller models that we can API call to and run a certain task, like a signature validation or pre-match or reconciliations activity, and embed that, keep humans in the loop. We do see that sort of as our nirvana, at least for the next few years. But we also have a strategy to leverage those larger proprietary models. Very difficult for us. We don't yet see a path to kind of getting regulatory approval for using the open AIs of the world for production activities. But with the smaller models, we can have conversations with regulators around explainability, around how these models were built, trained. They're publicly scrutinized on Hugging Face, for example. That gives us an avenue to go live with some of these solutions, as we mentioned before, bringing those POCs live, and then that might lead to a Nirvana 2.0, where it is a combination of larger proprietary models, small models, but all orchestrated together with that application layer. That's definitely something we want to focus on. And again, to my earlier point, it's incumbent for all of us to keep sort of enterprise AI above the falling of that hype curve. We need to keep that momentum. We're probably talking to an audience that are believers already, but we need to take a lot of these points that we've heard on this call, bring it into practice, and making sure that we maintain that momentum of AI development.
So keep lobbying those regulators, eh? Matt, some final comments?
Final comments. Well, first comment is, where do I go after awesome responses from Jin and Alan? Because it's absolutely spot on, and I couldn't agree more. So let me try and find a sliver of something different to discuss. And I'll say this: CIOs and CTOs are constantly answering one fundamental question in IT decisions inside their organizations. Should I build it or should I buy it? Okay. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, there has certainly been a big push between towards we need to build this ourselves. I think in 2025, we will get a little bit better at answering that question and being able to delineate what we do in-house versus what we can source externally. I would go on to say, we will see next year, and this is a paradox of an answer, we will see fewer POCs and fewer pilots, but we will see more money spent in AI. And I think that this is a nod towards the fact that, we're going to start converting them into the real time, into the enterprise. So the future is certainly bright for AI. It's a different realm that we're going to be walking into next year. And we're going to be a little bit more intelligent about deciding what we'll do in-house and where we're going to seek help from third-party providers.
Excellent. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. It's left for me to thank profusely our three columnists, panelists. I think it's been a fascinating and very, very energetic discussion. So thank you to the three.